Hello once again, everybody. We're visiting with Greg LaBarge, and Greg, for lack of a better fancy title, you are an agronomist that gets out there where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. And I know that this year in the Buckeye State, and let's concentrate on the Maumee Basin, farmers got a horrendous start with all the rain that fell and the flooding that took place, the windows, or maybe I should say lack of windows to get planting done and all of that. Let's bring everybody up to date. Where does everybody stand from an agronomic standpoint, the crops that did get planted and the fields and where they are today?
All right, and I can even for a second take you back to 2018 in the fall, because in relationship to harvest and getting fall activities done, it was a challenge to get prepared for our 2019 cropping season. And certainly the cropping season hasn't allowed us much opportunity to get farming done. In fact, if you look at the basin, probably 80% of the farming that would typically be done didn't occur till after June 1st. That's when we started to get some crops in. We also have the decisions in relationship to crop insurance that caused us to make some prevented planting decisions, where in essence we're going to not plant a large number of acres up in the basin. Probably about 45% of our corn, somewhere around 23% of our soybean acres that we would typically have in the region won't be planted, and that amounts to about 1.3 million acres. So it is a widespread type of impact that we have this year, something unprecedented that we've never seen before.
Of the corn that's been planted, of course, much of that got late planting and a slow start. Will more of that corn be going to silage this year?
Well, I don't know that. It's going to depend on when frost date comes. I mean, as we look at the fall season development through the summer, a lot of that corn is going to need to be harvested for grain, because we're going to have a strong grain need to support our poultry and swine industry in northwest Ohio. So I think in looking at the basis and where that's at on corn and corn prices themselves, certainly grain's going to be the priority. But we also have a large livestock industry from a forage standpoint, both dairy and beef industry, that's looking for silage. A lot of those needs, I think, can be met with what the farmers are doing in relationship to after that preventive planting decision of putting some cover crops in for emergency forage. But there's going to be some silage needs as well that could result. We'll see how the season develops. Part of the story is still to be determined.
Exactly. I'm thinking, too, of the runoff, the nutrients that are no longer in the soil, the damage that was done by Mother Nature. How do farmers go about bringing things back to where they should be?
Yeah, I think the big thing is trying to get some type of crop into the ground, whether it's a cover crop just for cover crop's sake. We have some pretty cheap options with oats. The big thing that we don't want to do is by leaving that ground open and it still continues to be saturated, is we start to kill off a lot of the microbiology of that soil system. Having roots there, providing aeration, providing a food source for those microbes are pretty necessary as far as soil cycling, nutrient cycling, and some of the things that make us successful as far as crop production.
Now, I know that educators like yourself and various extension educators around the state and throughout the Maumee Basin are there for the education that farmers need. Are you finding that companies that provide some of the cover crops and some of the fixes, I guess you would say, are they getting out there more this year? Are they working with you folks more to get the word out or help get the word out?
Yeah, we have a lot of industry working in the area, doing a lot of good things, and we do work with them on a lot of different projects closely. I guess one thing that we ought to think about is that this non-planted acres extend into their business as well. We know that farming is not an isolated business, and beyond the farm gate, both with inputs and outputs, we see need for a support industry. And we know that the input side, that there's fertilizer that didn't get spread, somewhere in estimated around 50% of the fertilizer that would have normally gone on didn't get applied this last year up to this point. We have nitrogen that's not going to go on a corn crop, a fairly expensive nutrient, so there's a part of the business that's not happening this year. So that farm input side is suffering as well in relationship to trying to figure out how to manage this tough year. On the output side, 1.3 million acres of ground produces a lot of bushels of grain, and that's how our grain elevators make their profit, is on margins in relationship to handling that grain, and that's not going to be handled this fall. So a lot of widespread impacts in relationship to what's going on this year.
Greg, on the flip side, as we look to next year, does that mean some of the outputs, or I'm sorry, some of the inputs might be a little cheaper for the farmer?
You know, that's going to kind of depend on how this whole system works out. I mean, when you think about Ohio itself, we don't have a huge impact on grain markets. So what's happening in Iowa, what's happening in Illinois in particular are going to impact that grain market, which ultimately seems to tie into how much it would cost us for fertilizer and herbicides and seed and all those kind of things. But yeah, it's going to have a financial impact, something that's going to be long lasting. And this is a several year process for businesses that survive, and there will be unfortunately a few that don't, but businesses survive to work their way through this whole system and what's happening. So the stress is on the farm. Stress is within the ag sector, and we're saying to a lot of people, be a good neighbor and ask how things are going. That simple message of caring, that simple message of talking to someone is really important this year, particularly as we work out in these rural landscapes and have a little distance between neighbors and so forth. Check on everybody.
Very good. Very good. That last line that you said could have been the best input that you gave in the entire interview. A lot of folks over the years know how to reach you, but for those few that don't, how do they contact you for more info?
Probably the best way is labarge.1@osu.edu, an email address. Happy to answer anything. I'd use my cell phone for phone because I'm out in the countryside pretty often, so it's 419-460-0600.
Greg LaBarge has been our guest. Greg, thanks for being with us.
You're welcome.
And stay with us, back with more right after this.
Welcome to the 30-second tour of your local Poet plant. Local producers sell us tons of their grain. We grind it, mix it with water and special enzymes. The result is fermented, distilled, and dehydrated until it's 200 proof alcohol. Corn oil is extracted, and protein and nutrients are condensed, dried, and turned into animal feed, bringing our tour to an end with high-protein feed and cleaner-burning high-octane fuel. Visit poet.com to learn more.
United Equity Inc. is your locally owned farm-based cooperative. For agronomic services, we offer seed and a full line of dry and liquid fertilizer, as well as soil sampling by soil type, grid, or management zone to best utilize your fertilizer application. Call us to discuss agronomic services customized for you. Reach your best yields with United Equity, serving Allen, Auglaize, Mercer, Putnam, and Van Wert counties. Visit us on the web at unitedequityinc.com.
Hug hills, valleys, and uneven terrain this harvest with the MacDon FD1 series, available at your local Apple Farm Service. Flex and float over uneven terrain with Flex Float technology. Adjust the Feed Max X system to match your combine's performance capabilities. Grab lodged crops with the tight 4-inch wheel finger spacing, and stay in the cab longer with the optional in-cab side draper speed control. The MacDon FD1 series, available at your local Apple Farm Service.
Allen Davis Insurance Agency in Wapakoneta and Minster is your solutions provider. You can trust the experienced professionals at Allen Davis Insurance to protect your assets. Call today and start saving money with multi-policy discounts and more for auto, home, life, business, recreational, total farm protection, and more. Call Allen Davis Insurance Agency in Wapakoneta and Minster. We are your solutions provider. Call 1-800-686-2148.
Hello once again, everybody. I have the opportunity now to talk with a climatologist, a weather scientist, if you will, Aaron Wilson. He's with The Ohio State University. This really piques my interest, Aaron. Tell us what you see as far as weather patterns are looking like for the rest of 2019.
You know, a lot of interest, obviously, on when that freeze date's going to occur this fall. You know, it's too early to tell exactly when that's going to occur. Certainly, from a longer perspective, our freeze dates have been pushed back a little bit farther. So we certainly could have perhaps that on our side. But early signs are that fall will overall average above normal as well. No real strong signals on precipitation as of yet.
With all the weather problems, and I say problems, I'm talking about the rainfall that we've had throughout the Buckeye State this year, and creating fewer windows for farmers to do what they need to do. I guess it behooves them to keep a lookout for what the weather's going to be doing from here on out.
Sure. I mean, I think farmers have naturally, battled or loved the weather throughout time. As long as there's been farming, certainly weather's been a really important factor. What we've seen now are some persistent threats. When you talk about shortening windows, for instance, we know our springtime precipitation is up, particularly in April. We know our suitable fieldwork days are down about 5 days since 1995 in April. And also we're losing 5 days in October. So there goes 10 seasons of 10 days of the production season. It's very difficult, right, to catch up and get back from, and that's the long-term trends. So certainly farmers, I think, are nervous. Some of those, the corn that they put in, hoping that they pick the right hybrid, that we're going to get to the right season length here. So there'll be a lot of watchful, nervous eyes, I think, on the forecast as we head into the fall.
Well, as a farm broadcaster, I look mostly for what happens with the agricultural community, but I suppose there are businesses outside of agriculture that want to get your expertise on what's going to be happening with the weather.
Sure. I mean, you can think of several different businesses that come to my mind. Obviously, folks are thinking about tiling, with the precipitation. There was a kind of a funny question, maybe it's a little tongue-in-cheek, about what are propane sales like? What are we going to do with that moisture? What's the moisture content going to be like as we get into the fall? So certainly there's a lot of areas of ag that are impacted. Communities are feeling the impact as well. That's a large part of the economics of these communities that depend on ag, and so it's really a community response that's happening to the conditions that we've seen, but also a community impact.
How involved do you get with the student body at The Ohio State University?
Yeah, I give presentations and stuff to the student body at Ohio State, and I try to relate the message of how important ag is and how interrelated it is with the weather and climate. I enjoy more being out in the community and talking with the agricultural communities throughout Ohio and helping them piece together some of the the information and impacts that they're feeling. I think that's really important, and that's why I love coming to events like this today.
Besides tile, the tillage that a farmer can do ahead of a potential problem, what are some other types of avenues a farmer can decide to do on his farm that would enhance his operation?
Yeah, there are a number of, for instance, today we're talking about conservation practices, and I don't think, or I do think that farmers really have to evaluate what's right and what's not right for their individual farms. I think we've shown that there are, benefits to having no-till, to having cover crops. One of the things I think about is how do we slow down the water, in terms of a water quality issue? How do we slow down that water? How do we keep more of that nutrient on the field, for instance, because no farmer wants to see that washed off with these intense rainfall events that we're seeing. So thinking about things like that, how do we get roots in the ground? How do we, provide buffer strips or grass waterways? There's a lot of number of conservation measures, and trying to determine which one's right for you, I think, is an individual question, but one that we probably should all be thinking about.
Aaron, I find it so refreshing that people in Extension like yourself and even farm operators, farm owners, are they're ready to work together to do all kinds of testing on their farms to come up with better solutions for the problems that they might face in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you may be familiar with the eFields project with OSU Extension, so the on-farm research and other things. That on-farm research is critical. I always say, I'm here as a climatologist, and I can provide expertise on weather and climate, but I'm not a farmer. Right? And so I really rely on the farming expertise that everyone in the community has, so we can come together, have good conversations about things that are happening, their impacts, and some of the solutions. I think ag can be part of the solution moving forward, both from an adaptation standpoint, but also mitigation standpoint, drawing down CO2, enriching our soils, improving our water quality. These are all things that farmers are eager, I think, in Ohio to take care of.
Well, as you can tell, we've only hit the tip of the iceberg. If some of our viewers right now would like to find out a little bit more information and possibly get in contact with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, so you can email me at wilson.1010@osu.edu. You can check me out also on Facebook and Twitter, Dr. Wilson's Weather. So there's some information there. You can check out the State Climate Office of Ohio's website. That's climate.osu.edu. So there's 3 good ways to get some more information.
Very good, and very exciting to have you with us today.
Awesome.
Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
And stay with us, back with more right after this.
Closed captioning paid for in part by the following. Are you looking to buy or sell farmland? Then work with a company that works for you. Ron Spencer Real Estate. Founded in 1975, Ron Spencer specializes in farmland, agricultural, and commercial real estate. Check him out on the web with 3 locations to serve you. Ron Spencer Real Estate at rsre.com. That's rsre.com.
Sinus problems and headaches? Have a sneaking suspicion there's mold lurking about? With over 20 years in business, you can trust the professionals at EarthSafe Ozone. They will test, inspect, and treat your home or office, eliminating mold, mildew, fungus, and bacteria. It's time to put an end to pesky mold. Call 419-227-0303 to schedule your mold spore test today.
S&S Volvo is your locally owned heavy-duty truck dealership in the area with a full line of Volvo and Isuzu trucks. We offer Volvo, Isuzu, Cummins, and GM parts and service weekdays until midnight until 4:30 p.m. on Saturdays. We also have leasing and rental options to meet your needs. We have the expertise to get and keep you on the road. Stop by at 2600 St. John's Road or visit us at ssvolvo.com to see our wide selection of new and used truck inventory. Welcome back to In Ohio Country today. Big Dan Wilson alongside of Bruce Clevenger. And Bruce is an OSU extension agent up in Defiance County. And we're here at the Kalida Fish and Game Club talking about the Field to Lake Agriculture Field Day. And one of the important topics here today, of course, is water quality. And you have a really cool demonstration behind us and a very cool topic to talk about today, Bruce.
Yeah, drainage water management. We're talking about the watershed that we all live in, that we farm in, that we have recreation in. So all of those purposes come together. But one thing that we have in Northwest Ohio is a continued need for drainage of excess water. With that comes a responsibility of water quality as well.
You know, of course, with this technology that we have here today and some of the demonstrations that we're talking about, our farmers are taking a frontline, first-hand approach, if you will, to trying to improve that water quality. And the Lake Erie watershed, especially here in the western Lake Erie Basin, has certainly had its complications, if you will, but farmers are doing their best part. And here today, they're learning a lot about what they can do to improve that water quality.
They are learning about the tools that are in the toolbox so that, one tool doesn't fix everything that we're repairing. It's not improve. We don't use one tool to improve things to make it better for, let's just say, the next generation. So one of the tools in the toolbox that I'm talking about today is drainage water management, which talks about, yes, we do need to remove excess water out of the farm fields, but when and how do we do that safely so that we're minimizing the loss of soil and minimizing the loss of soluble nutrients that can go with that drainage water.
You know, what's kind of unusual, of course, here in Northwest Ohio, this used to be called the Black Swamp. So there was a flat land here covered by water, covered by muck, and farmers spent a lot of time trying to drain that water. But there's kind of a natural hold, if you will, when it comes to moisture on our fields here. And sometimes you just can't get it off at a timely rate. And so it's kind of difficult for farmers to figure out what kind of drainage, like you said, or how often they should try to work on their fields to get that moisture off the field so it doesn't affect their crops. It's a real catch-22, isn't it?
It is, and those soils that you described, the Great Black Swamp soils, they are some of the most productive in the Midwest. So they are heavy clay soils, but they have organic matter in them. They're fertile naturally. They're flat. They're very farmable. They respond well to subsurface drainage and drainage improvements. And so once we put some of those practices in place, then it kind of opens up, are we moving too much water at a certain time of the year? That does leave us open to some off-site nutrient losses. And really the tradition has been The mindset that we want to change is drainage is about getting rid of the water as much as we can, as fast as we can. We need to change that concept as to we only want to drain as much water as we need to and no drop more, not a single drop more than we need. And so we're talking about water conservation, retaining water in fields, and improving crops, but also reducing losses of nutrients that do affect the watershed in the rivers and streams and our Lake Erie.
You know, Bruce, when we're talking about retention, what are we talking about? Are we talking about developing more ponds, developing more natural habitats that can hold that water? Are we talking about CREP? Are we talking about those natural resources that we can put out there to keep the water from migrating into the streams? What are we talking about?
So with drainage water management, we're using the infrastructure that farmers already have in place in the field. So we might think of a 40-acre field that has tile that are strings of tile. They're buried subsurface. They're plastic tubing. They have punctuations or they're perforated. So the soiled water, the free water, moves to those tile. So what we're going to do is actually use that subsurface drainage system as the storage vessel and retain that water right within the subsurface system. It's going to be down below where the crops are growing, where the roots are developing, where we're going to end up having yield and what farmers need. But at the same time, we can store and retain some of the water and leave it in the field, sometimes during the growing season. But honestly, the most important time of the year that we need to manage the outlet of these fields is after harvest, through the winter, and before spring planting. That is a very important time of the year where farmers with this technology have the ability to hold that water in these fields, retain what needs retained in the field. It's not going to cause any additional problems in the field, but retain it during the non-growing season. And that's a kind of a different way of thinking of drainage, is managing that outlet.
Is it kind of like a shut-off valve or a turn-on valve? I mean, is that what we're talking about as far as that kind of technology? And are there other ways of being able to monitor that electronically?
Sure. So think of it as a kind of an in-place dam. So we have a big pipe that you might see coming out of a field. Well, before that pipe discharges that water into the ditch, we would have a square box or a round box that has boards stacked on top of each other. And what we're ultimately doing is we are artificially raising the water table, the water level at which that water would flow out of the field. So we're stacking these boards higher and higher to build a small dam, if you would, in the field to use that infrastructure in the field to retain that water that otherwise would be by gravity leaving that field. And so it's a pretty simple technology. It doesn't require electricity. It just requires a physical structure to hold that water in. And then the question you asked is, can we monitor that? Yes, there's technology to monitor that water level remotely, or we can physically look in that box and see where our water levels are in the field.
Well, I have to tell you, one of the things that we've always noticed about our OSU Extension agents are the fact that they come with firsthand knowledge. So whether you're on the farm or off the farm, when we're talking to individuals like Bruce, these guys are out there in the front lines doing their best, both as active farmers and as educators, to help improve our environment and especially our water quality. Bruce Clevenger has been our guest from the OSU Extension office in Defiance County. Bruce, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much, Dan. Good to have you. Good to be here.
And we'll be back with more In Ohio Country today, right after this.
I'm Terry McClure, a fifth-generation soybean farmer. Farming can be tough, but we have the Ohio Soybean Council investing farmers' dollars to find new uses for soybeans. Their research helps develop better beans for livestock, poultry, and for people. It also helps create new products like soy-based cleaning supplies and paint cartridges, plus cleaner-burning soy biodiesel. Soybeans are Ohio's #1 agricultural export. To learn more, visit soyohio.org.
Hug hills, valleys, and uneven terrain this harvest with the MacDon FD1 series, available at your local Apple Farm Service. Flex and float over uneven terrain with FlexFloat technology. Adjust the FeedMax X system to match your combine's performance capabilities. Grab lodged crops with the tight 4-inch reel finger spacing, and stay in the cab longer with the optional in-cab side draper speed control. The MacDon FD1 series, available at your local Apple Farm Service.
Hello once again, everybody. We're visiting once again with Nick Zachrich, the manager of Farm Science Review. We're at the Molly Cairn Agricultural Center, and it's not going to be too long, September 17th, 18th, and 19th, until the 2019 Farm Science Review is going to be held. Now, Nick, when folks come to the review, what's the best way for them to get here as far as ease of entrance into the review site? There's a lot of acreage here.
Yeah, so we have 2,100 acres total, and the exhibit area itself is 100 acres with 100 acres of parking around it. So coming off of US 40, I really recommend you come from the west if at all possible, and come in State Route 56. Just because of the construction that's on I-70 this year. So just keep that in mind when you're traveling in, and it'll be much smoother sailing too when you come in. And then early is better. So like I mentioned before about timing, our busiest time of the year, busy time of the day is 9 to 10 in the morning. So if you come before 9 o'clock, you'll beat the traffic. You can beat the traffic at Farm Science Review.
Very good. And if folks want a little bit more information, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, the best place for information is fsr.osu.edu is our website, and you can find a lot of information there, especially with our exhibitor directory online, and then it'll give you information on how to download our app if you're interested in that as well.
Very good. Nick Zachrich, farm manager here at Farm Science Review, has been our guest. Nick, thanks for being with us.
Great. Thank you, Gary. Appreciate it.
S&S Volvo is your locally owned heavy-duty truck dealership in the area with a full line of Volvo and Isuzu trucks. We offer Volvo, Isuzu, Cummins, and GM parts and service weekdays until midnight until 4:30 p.m. on Saturdays. We also have leasing and rental options to meet your needs. We have the expertise to get and keep you on the road. Stop by at 2600 St. John's Road or visit us at ssvolvo.com to see our wide selection of new and used truck inventory. Allen Davis Insurance Agency in Wapakoneta and Minster is your solutions provider. You can trust the experienced professionals at Allen Davis Insurance to protect your assets. Call today and start saving money with multi-policy discounts and more for auto, home, life, business, recreational, total farm protection, and more. Call Allen Davis Insurance Agency in Wapakoneta and Minster. We are your solutions provider. Call 1-800-686-2148.
Hey, that's going to do it for this week's edition of In Ohio Country Today. Be sure to check us out on Facebook. We have a YouTube channel and more. You can always check out our website at inohiocountry.com. Have a good day, everybody.